So who were you before you founded Side? What were you doing? What was your experience? There's a lot of people that watch our programming here at Valuetainment, and they have an idea and they want to step out as an entrepreneur. We always give them the same advice. Make sure you've saved some money to get out there, and make sure you know the market, you know the buyer, and you are smart about whatever it is you're going to do. Whether it's software, whether you're making t-shirts in Berlin, doesn't matter. Make sure that you're ready to get through the winter with some savings. And they all come from different places, but what they all love talking to each other and learning what everybody's background, what was the fingerprint of the entrepreneur before they started the successful company that kind of defines them. What were you doing and who were you?
I don't come from real estate. And if I had been in real estate, the odds of us having thought of Side and having had that insight would have been much lower, because more often than not, when it comes to legacy industries like real estate or, hotels or taxis, it takes an outside perspective and a beginner's mindset to identify the opportunity that everyone else within the industry is missing, because they are so institutionalized and are so invested in the status quo that it's really hard to see beyond that. The way I describe it is like a fish doesn't know that land exists, right?
Exactly. So what were you doing? So what were you
water.
doing when you looked out at real estate? You said, I think there may be an opportunity over there, but you weren't tucked in real estate and kind of stuck,
I was not.
in your views.
I for whatever reason, came out of the womb helper, compulsive helper, and a problem solver. I see a problem, I want to fix a problem, just am drawn to things that way for whatever reason. I like to, hold doors open for strangers. We can psychoanalyze it all we'd like, but it just is what it is. And I started my first company in college by accident, and many years later found myself in, and it was in reaction to a problem I was having. I had an itch, I went ahead and scratched, and next thing you know, I was scratching for others. And many, many years later, when I was in my early 30s, which is about, 8 or 9 years ago now, I found myself in this incredibly privileged position where, for the first time in my life, I had enough money in my bank account that I didn't have to work to make ends meet every single month. And that allowed me to buy myself some time to be really deliberate about what I wanted to do with the next 20 years of my life. My 20s were all about exploration, and I let the wind take me where it would, without trying to control the direction. And in my 30s, it was all about being a lot more deliberate. And so I actually went through a 2-year process in my early 30s, searching for a really compelling problem to solve that would enrich and support and be of service to people I actually deeply cared about. And I did not think that would be real estate. And it wasn't until 10 months into that nearly 2-year period where real estate presented as an opportunity. But I was just following the problems. I took away all the solution bias. I wasn't going out there looking for a problem to solve with a particular solution in mind.
That's fantastic. Do you today, or at the time it was founded, did you have like a key advisor or maybe a mentor? I had a mentor all the way up into my 40s, somebody I could trust and go talk to. I never thought of mentorship as something, I need it because I'm green, I'm right out of college. But I always had somebody there. Did you have somebody in your life that was a key advisor or a mentor you could go to bounce things off of? And where did you find that person?
I'll say a few things on that. I think fundamentally for entrepreneurs watching this, one of the most important things you need to learn how to do as an entrepreneur, as a founder, is to manage your own psychology, to be your own mentor, and to become someone that understands how to be introspective and intellectually honest and sober about what's real and what isn't. And that allows you to be more objective and make much better decisions. And that has been what sustained me, that ability, much more than anything else that's external, is just that internal dialogue and that internal capacity. But there's no question that in my life, there have been a lot of influential people The closest I would say that comes to a mentor is a gentleman named Dana, who is with one of the world's best venture funds called Matrix. It's been around since the 80s, long before the movies. Very successful early stage fund. And I met him unceremoniously when I was in Los Angeles working on my previous company, and we established a connection relationship that was just there for some reason. And for many years, we stayed in touch. And when I decided in my early 30s to go off and explore and figure out what to work on next, he was the most supportive person in my life, made himself really available to bounce ideas back and forth, and eventually actually financially supported the mission of Side and made it possible for us to come to market.
Fantastic. You know what's interesting? Managerial psychology is such an important point, because I think there's a lesson in there, Guy, that you're talking about is you might be able to have too many advisors, or you might be trusting people that maybe are different risk profile people. Yes. Maybe they're more corporate, and so they're going to be, hey, you've made this money, it's sitting in the bank. Why don't you just go work for somebody else? Why take that risk? And that's the wrong psychology. If you really feel you have found something, you can follow it. You believe that there's an itch to scratch there.
I would add, two quick things to that. One, I don't believe that you should go out and seek mentorship or seek mentors. And oftentimes you'll find your best mentors in your peers, people that are also doing what you were doing, working in the same stage, or maybe a little bit ahead of yourself. But mentors will present themselves as an output of your efforts, your motivation, your commitment, and dedication. If you put your shoulder to work on solving the problem that the people you want to solve problems for need solved, everything else tends to fall in line and follow. You don't have to engineer it or manufacture it. I do think there's a lot of value, Tom, in preventing your thinking from becoming overly influenced by inviting too many outside opinions from every person you can possibly imagine or muster. There's a great deal of value in allowing yourself to have inspired thinking born out of your own reason, right?
Yep. I think we're going to pull that as a short clip, and people are going to see that over and over. I happen to 100% agree with you. One of the things that I found with my companies was the importance of transparency in the face of mistakes. We didn't make a lot of mistakes, but sometimes a mistake would be made, or you misjudge a market, but you had to guess, and your guess was wrong. Had there been any mistakes or things with Side, not something cataclysmic that almost killed the company, but just key mistakes where you have to sit back and go, you know what, that didn't work, we can't do that anymore. If there was something like that, you don't have to go into it, but how transparent were you about your role in it with your team?
All very good questions. I was thinking about this question a bit proactively because you mentioned it to me ahead of time, because you knew it would be a bit of a hairy one, but I couldn't actually, I could say with a fair deal of confidence and conviction that Side hasn't experienced or made any one big mistake. I don't know if that's a real thing where companies make a single big mistake. I think what the only single big mistake you can really make is preventing your company and yourself from having an opportunity to make the day-to-day, week-to-week small mistakes that inevitably you will make in the course of bringing something new to market, commercializing, selling, executing. So the only real big mistake you can make out there is if you've got an idea and you maybe are, go out and try to build it to perfection, and you take a year before you put it in front of a customer. And then once you do, they immediately react to it and say, oh, I wish it had this thing. And you could have known that 11 months beforehand if you exposed it more upfront and allowed yourself to have more cycles to learn from the mistakes that you're making and then apply them. So that's the only big mistake you can make. And I'm very fortunate to say that that wasn't the case at Side. And it's because I've had enough experiences in the past where I recognize that there's great value in making mistakes and making it, normalizing it such that people can make mistakes and not suffer, consequence or something overly punitive is an incredibly important force to have within a dynamic organization and workforce. So I often tell the team, you're more likely to die from indigestion than starvation. We're more likely to die from 1,000 little cuts than one big giant one. And so one of my go-to tenets is that success is almost always in the recovery. It's in actually making progress, anticipating that there'll be some misstep, knowing that you can't anticipate each and every one of those, but being prepared to react when they happen.
That's outstanding. Well, I really appreciate you taking time to be here. This has been really, really rich. I'll give you the last bit. Are there one or two pieces of advice? And I know you said don't seek mentors, but is there one or two pieces of advice to entrepreneurs? How about if you know one of them from the early stage, but one of them like more mid-stage? You got off the ground, you have your second or third venture capital, you proved your model, you're making some revenue, so you have validation. Do you have some advice for either that early stage entrepreneur or the mid-stage entrepreneur? Because you've been very successful along this, and you've done what most people dream about doing, is you've got the $1 billion valuation and a proven business model and momentum. It's up to the market and everything else to be ready to see how high you can go.
Exactly right. My advice for early stage, if I had to impart one thing, if you're just in the beginning of solving problems and building software or service or whatever it is you're doing, is pay very close attention to the quote unquote frequency case, the frequency case. That's what you ultimately want to solve for. So, for example, if there's going to Africa on a safari is very low frequency, right? That's not a behavior that happens very often for people. Getting on an airplane from one city to the other for work is a much more frequent experience. So if you're building something in travel, your best bet is to identify the problems around the frequency case where there's lots of activity all the time, quite often, because that's where you can actually get people to use your product or your service in a more consistent and ongoing way that creates retention long-term, which is where value really comes from. It doesn't come from the first sale. It comes from your ability to continue working with that person for many, many years to come. Right?
What a great point. The frequency case. Huge.
So I think in the early stage, it's a big old like secret sauce kind of thing, is find the frequency case. In Side's business, the frequency case in real estate is not a person buying a house. That only happens once every 10 years. Right? A lot of startups have been built around a buyer buying a house and making that easier. They've never done well because they have to originate a brand new client every single day to do brand new business. There is no repeatability, no consistency, etc. So that's what I would say. But Side's use case is smooth out the transaction process for agents. Agents are in transaction every single day. They write offers every single day. They put together listing agreements every single day. They handle addendums every single day. So making that really beautiful and smooth and magical creates stickiness and creates value. At a later stage, at a mid to later stage, I would tell you the number one piece of advice I would give people is founders and operators at that stage is resist the urge to hire into perceived opportunity. So resist the urge to hire into perceived opportunity. That's that indigestion versus starvation thing I was talking about. As companies become more successful, you have more capital, you start seeing opportunity everywhere because it is everywhere. There's opportunity everywhere. But to realize opportunity requires great focus, great investment, great energy. It's not as simple as turning a few people's attention to it. It's an incredible organizational lift. And so I think in mid-stage, the magical thing that you can do is be really disciplined about maintaining focus around your core product, going deeper, not broader, and making it that much more robust and effective.
Love it. Really appreciate that. Well, I just want to congratulate you and thank you again. I kind of, maybe love isn't the right word, but I really kind of fell in love with the company when I did the research to do the profile, the case study, because I looked at it and I'm like, wait a minute, this is not like these transaction companies. I call them real estate transaction companies. They're like saying, hey, put your house on the market. It won't cost you 6%. That's the only benefit. The only benefit you were going to save the seller, a percent. That was the only person in the ecosystem that gets benefit. The buyer didn't have someone to talk to. The buyer had to self-select and go through. And if they're moving to a new market and the neighborhoods are listed, what the hell do they know about the new neighborhoods unless they've actually gone to the city and driven around? And why would you drive around the entire city until you found you say, well, I think I want to live here. I think the school's here. That's what a buyer's real estate agent can cut all that time out of. And all these transaction companies were doing was making it easier for a seller to save money on the transaction. I looked at it and I said, where's the rest of the benefit here? Where's the rest of it? Where's the real estate agent that said, I was here 15 years ago when that housing division was built. It's one of the best builders in the area, right? And it's like, how would you know that?
Exactly. It really takes away all the nuance. And look, that's why 20 years into the internet, 90+% of transactions are still agent assisted because consumers genuinely value that. They want a fiduciary that knows what they're doing, that can cover their behind, right? Keep them safe, represent their interests, and that's why it persists. But yeah, I think I'll say a note on what you just said there, Tom. I know we were wrapping up, but I think very little innovation comes from cutting costs or making things cheaper, and very few companies have ever been successful doing that or pursuing that as a strategy. Real innovation is born out of creating more value than there was before.
It's a blue ocean strategy. It's like creating value and rather than discounting everything to become a bloody red ocean where all the sharks just attack each other. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you doing this. We're going to cut this into short clips. I hope they're useful to you too, to share with other people, because your story is a great one. And I so appreciate it. And I've, your friendship and knowing you, as well as giving your perspective to entrepreneurs everywhere.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. I've been a big fan of yours for some time. And like I said, when I first saw that video that you did describing what Side was, you were the very first person I ever saw that got it. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much.